when our teams go, and even the teams that I've been on, um, many times after visiting some of these charities or churches or ministries, um, whether that be a home, like a home of handicapped people in India, because in India and Hindu culture, with karma, they don't you deserve what you get, and so the whole impetus to help handy a lot of these kids just end up in a room not cared for, on the streets not cared for, and you see that in India. So when we went to a home that had mentally challenged kids and kids that were physically challenged in different ways, and you spend a couple of hours with them, that night at dinner, we've had team members that they literally were so overwhelmed, they were speechless, overwhelmed by the need, overwhelmed by just the experience, overwhelmed by a sense of compassion. I mean, to have compassion aroused in you is something that some people have actually really not experienced before. Our teams in Thailand, when they were down in southern Thailand, looking at ministries that were there when the tsunami hit and ended up staying because of the sheer need of southern Thailand. There were team members that talked about, people going out after dinner, and some of them just went back to their rooms and literally just wept because things were touched in their hearts that had never been touched before, in terms of compassion, in terms of seeing true poverty. And so that's really the ideal. It's not just to observe it so that we know we should send them money. It's for you to experience so that your heart changes. And the highlights, people enjoy the fun times. Our trips, we've had whitewater rafting, we've had, all kinds of fun stuff we've done, but that's usually not what people remember. What they remember is what touched their heart, and it's really the actual work on the ground that they see. So,
Yeah, when you return from a trip, your team will have the opportunity to present the results of your trip to the board, and the board may choose at that point to honor your request to say, hey, we've seen these organizations in action, and we'd like to fund certain particular things in one or more of those organizations. So you'll have, and as part of that presentation, we get to hear how people are impacted by the trip personally.
And often people have tears when they're sharing.
So
Often.
I've got some slides that normally we do on the last week, but because we've sort of jumped into the trips, I thought I'd present these now just to make sure we've covered them. So to be trip eligible, you're allowed to miss 1 week. We'll be starting a new session of Giving University in the mid-April timeframe. So the people on those that attend there, other than Kenya, would be able to attend one of the September-October trips. If you have friends or family that you want joining you on a trip, you'd want them to sign them up for that trip. Or for that class. If you've missed more than one class, then typically what we have you do is come back for that week, one of those weeks, the next time that it's offered. So if you missed week 2 and week 3, you'd have to come back for either week 2 or week 3 in the following session. So then you would just say, hey, what day is week 2 going to be? And you show up, and then you've met that requirement. So that's why one of the reasons why attendance is taken and why attendance is important. The goal of the trip is observation. So we don't assume that, hey, if you're going to an organization that is helping farmers grow coffee, that you're a farmer or know a lot about growing coffee. So we don't expect you to necessarily have any special skills that would allow you to serve in that capacity. If you, for example, however, if you choose to go on the Uganda trip, that trip is designed for you to experience what goes on in that particular organization. So that organization has a piggery, and that organization grows its own crops, and so you may find yourself for a couple hours helping to do that, but not requiring any special skills other than be able to hold a shovel and shovel things. So, so then that's just part of the experience. And I've already talked about what happens when you get back. So generally we cover airport to airport. So you've got to get yourself to an airport with your passport and your luggage. We're not going to buy you suitcases. We're not going to fund your passport. If you are joining us from Texas, we will cover from the nearest Texas airport.
Yeah.
So wherever your home is, if we're all leaving out of Los Angeles, then we'll get you to Los Angeles. Does that mean if they have to spend the night, we put them up? Does that ever happen? Yeah.
Yeah, we do.
So generally, other than that, the money that you bring is your own spending money, plus, if we get to an area where we say, hey, this particular meal, it's not a sit-down meal, it's go out and find yourself something to eat. We're not going to sit there and hand you each $5. It's just way too much work for the trip leader to deal with that. Now, if the trip leader has already, arranged for something in that, at that particular area where they're just going to tally it up and he's going to pay it for it at the end, that's great. But we just don't want to put the giant onus on the trip leader to try to manage every single little itty bitty.
You had the chicken salad sandwich. You had the,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that doesn't happen. If there is a free day and you're going to go off and do some activity, that activity you're going to pay for. Even if there's a group activity and it's not part of the mission of Gideon University, we may or may not pay for that.
We'll tell you beforehand, though.
We'll tell you
And
before.
we'll basically tell you you're gonna have to bring money for that because we probably won't let you just stay alone somewhere else in the country either.
Yeah.
So basically, you're gonna have to bring some money for that.
Safaris are a big example of that.
Yeah.
We would say, hey, bring money for that.
Yeah.
So, anything else on the
No, that covers it.
you pay, we pay? Any questions from you guys on that? So,
Steve, I had one more for us that do not have passports yet, which I'm gonna get mine. I'm going on the Mexico trip, so I gotta get mine soon.
yeah.
How soon before you guys buy airline tickets do we need to have those passports?
You do have to have the passport when you show up.
Yeah.
I think we're able to buy the ticket without putting the passport
Some
number in there.
tickets you can't get without passports with some airlines, and some airlines you can get it before passport. So it's
we had to have passport numbers.
yeah, it depends. It depends on the airline. It depends on their restrictions.
Yeah, and their security in country, they want to know who's coming, and
Yeah.
passport's the international standard. But that process is really speeded up. You can get a passport now quickly if it's like an emergency. There's a place in
You can drive to LA. and
LA.
just-
You can
yeah.
drive there and do
In one day.
But you don't want to do that.
Yeah. You can do the online or mail in
Yeah.
thing, and it takes 3-4
If
weeks.
your passport is expiring within 6 months, get a new one. A lot of countries, a lot of restrictions. You can't do it if you have up to a 6 month. Not with all countries, but with some. If it's going to be up to a 6 month expiration, they won't let you do it. So make sure.
And pages, open pages for the visa
Yeah.
stamps, so.
All right, so that's all I had on the trips. Again, we'll try to send something out, give you a little bit more detail on individual trips so that you can help make a decision, and we'll go from there.
2-3 weeks.
If you go before summer.
Yeah.
All right,
We get closer.
let's go to presentations. So, remember, this is a large group. The goal is for you to be able to present in the 3-minute-ish time frame and be able to cover what your organization is, why you are passionate about it, and what you found out about the 990s. And then if we have questions, we'll ask questions. So, do I have a volunteer to go first?
I would volunteer.
All right, Dave, you are up. So what's the name of your organization?
The name of the organization is KidsWorks.
Can you move him over?
KidWorks.
KIDWRRKS.
Yes.
And just use the left right arrows. There he goes. Keep going.
I'm not seeing it.
He's in the lower right hand corner. There he is.
Oh, got it.
Um,
I don't know.
Let me see the 980.
I'll need that for a cheat sheet, but I've got
Yeah.
most of it written down.
That's fine. It just when it's one word, it gives me different search results than if it's 2 words.
It's a DBA of El Puente Community Development Corporation. I've got that written down too, if you want to see it.
No, I got it.
Okay.
All right, you're up.
Okay. Could you give me the brief outline again of what you're looking for from me? And I'll try to be more timely. Because I made a report here.
What your organization is, how it's having an impact, why you picked it, what you learned from the 990s.
Okay. This is an organization that works with children from preschool all the way to high school. And they have a high percentage of volunteers support from the mothers. They service kids from the local community of Santa Ana, and those parents show up to support those kids. Over the last 6 to 8 years, they've gone from high school, they had a 20% graduation rate, and 20% went on to college. Over the last 2 years, that's been 100% of all their graduates are enrolled in colleges.
Wow.
And this is a tremendous benefit to the people of Santa Ana. Okay, that's kind of who the organization is.
Why did you pick this organization?
I picked this organization because I had some firsthand contact with them, and I just believe in what they believe in. That strong families and working with kids is going to be the fastest way to revitalize and really bring prosperity to any community. Without a focus on kids grow up and they just perpetuate a problem. But when you focus on those kids, they change the whole community, because once they are out of college, those kids invest themselves back in what meant so much to them, and that's the passion.
Oh, cool.
Do you know how those students are selected?
I don't know that process.
I know, they're regional. They transformed Minnie Street, this organization, KidWorks, completely. It was, most cops would say it was the worst, most dangerous neighborhood in all of Santa Ana years ago. Their founder, Larry, and the person now who runs the organization, transformed. Anybody in the city will tell you, they transformed Minnie Street on there. And it's by the neighborhood. It's for the neighborhood and by the neighborhood.
Yeah. Their 91% of KidsWorks K through third grade are testing below grade level in reading. 91% improved their score. 100% of KidsWorks preschool students were assessed as kindergarten ready. 90% of KidsWorks K through third grade students testing below grade level in math improved their score. This is all last year's reporting. 100% of KidsWorks High School graduated in 4 years, and 100% of their seniors are now currently enrolled in college or university.
That's great.
It's just an outstanding program. The things that I learned notably from the 990 here is on line 12, 99% of their funding comes from individual contributions. And that's an increase of $104,000 over previous years. Salaries during that time dropped by 13%, and they have increased all their efficiencies to do more with less employees. I talked with the leader, David Benavides, and that's due to the high percentage of parents that willingly volunteer and take up teaching positions. Even as far as cleanup, janitorial, everybody's in. It's a true community event.
Yeah, you can see up here in lines 5 and 6, and we don't typically go over all this stuff, but 42 individuals who have gotten some sort of compensation, but 300 volunteers is really nice.
It's unbelievable. On line 9, program revenue was less than 1% of the total revenue, and the change from 2013 to 2014, which is the year I looked at, was negligible.
Okay.
Page 2, cost per person per year is $3,159. So that's to educate a child over I'm assuming that's a 10-month period. Okay. On page 7, the highest salary granted was for the executive officer, and that was $90,000. I think you'd agree that that's relatively modest for a guy who's doing this.
And it's
Page 10, management general expenses are less than 1% of the total. Fundraising expense, this jumps out, was 14%, but that was because they paid for a feasibility study for raising an extra $2.5 million for an expansion that they were going to accomplish. They've since raised all of that money, and a new building will be completed this summer. This doubles the amount of families that can attend and who will be served. They will be at nearly 1,600 residents, and as a result, the preschool also doubles in size to 400. But this is a power-packed organization filled with not just good people, but great people from the community serving those kids. And the results, I think the impact, the transformational impact, speaks for itself.
That's great. Any students have questions for Dave? No, thank you. That was well covered, and you guys can see from I've got a more recent version that I've popped up than what he was looking at. But,
Okay.
you can see that there is still a little bit over 10% in fundraising, but they're having to raise a lot of money, and it's not anything that's alarming. So that's great. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, who's next?
I do want to credit Steve Kamalapali for helping me too. He knows how to read these numbers and get things, and he really helped. So thank you, Steve.
I can go.
Okay.
The name of the organization is called Solidarity, located in Placentia or Fullerton, depending. Sometimes it says Placentia, and sometimes it says Fullerton. It's right on the border. It's the third one down. So Solidarity, their ministry, their organization centers on the Garnet District in the city of Fullerton. The Garnet District is among one of the most poorest and the most violent in Fullerton. For decades, there has been no intervention from the city because it was too dangerous to go into, and as a result, there was a lot of violence. A friend of mine, she voluntarily moved into that neighborhood so she could go help the kids in there, and like the first week, her car was busted into. And this was just last year. So 10 years ago, it was in a sorry state of affairs. Solidarity focuses on breaking the cycles of poverty, and whether it's after-school mentoring, whether it's social enterprise internships, or empowering kids to move to the next level in their education, Solidarity works primarily with churches and other nonprofits, but they also work very well with the city of Fullerton and the city of Placentia on a variety of initiatives. Two of their core initiatives are focused in that neighborhood of Garnet, the Garnet neighborhood. And one of them is in Brazil. So let me give you some stats. Since 2007, they've been watching their impact numbers, and here's some interesting numbers. The graduation rate 10 years ago was 50%. Now it's 98%. There is a facility that was donated with computers and all kinds of equipment, and all those students go there after school and they continue their education. Teen pregnancy was 48% 10 years ago, now it's 0. They have a t-shirt company, when we get to the 990s I'll point that out, but 40 kids a year are given internships to learn a skill in the t-shirt production, as well as recently released inmates from Orange County Jail get internships there. In addition to that, the city of Fullerton is partnering with them to increase that capacity from 40 to well over 100 a year that can go through for job skills training.
How did you first get involved with the organization?
I was volunteering as an aide for their strategic development and their governance. The guy that leads it, Tommy Nixon's an old friend, and he was born and raised in the neighborhood, had a experience where he said, hey, listen, I want to give my life to this. And so we've given money to them, my wife and I, and we've also helped them on a personal level, particularly in strategic direction and governance. For me, it was really personal because these guys don't give handouts. What they do very well is they give hand-ups. And so for me, living in Orange County, I didn't come from a wealthy family, and it wasn't until I was 40 years old where somebody said to me, I think maybe you should go back to school. Well, I never finished my bachelor's degree. And the thought of, well, maybe I'm smarter than I think I am, maybe I should. Well, long story short, that was 7 years ago, and I finished my bachelor's degree, my master's degree. I finished a postgraduate research at Georgetown, and I'm working on my doctorate. Okay, all of that started because one guy said, I think maybe you got a shot. Maybe you should do this. And that's what these guys do. I've been to that neighborhood. I've walked the streets, and it's just somebody saying, I think you can have a better life. Maybe you should try a little bit, and then maybe try a little bit more, and something lovingly enough that will stay there. So for me, it's really entwined in my story. And so I've talked how I've worked with them before. Let me highlight some of the things from the 990s, if
Sure.
I may. Total revenue on page 1, line 12 is $595,000, which, hold on a second, or contributions, I should say, was $595,000. 54% of their total income comes from individualized grants. If you look on line 9, the program revenue was $276,000, or 46%. That was, I didn't realize it was that. I never knew it was that until I went and dug a little further. That's the revenue that the t-shirt company brings in, of which $34,000 is profit. And so most of that number is just passing through the organization to cover their costs, but they're making $34,000 on that. And this particular year,
Are the interns paid, or are they?
some of them are paid, some of them are not. Some of them are just given it the experience to get off the street.
Got it.
If you look at the salary number, that's why it's a little bit on the high side. They use a lot of it, and that is essentially paid for through the various T-shirt company employees, as well as some of their extended work into the organization. In terms of their program revenue, as I mentioned, 34,000 was new income that came in. They did pay a, I'll get to this in just a second. On page 2, you'll note that there's 3 areas in which they spent their programming. Local, or solid local as they call it, is what they're doing in the Garnet neighborhood. And that comes out to $514 per year per student. The second, solid enterprise, is hard to quantify what the per person cost is, because there's a profit that's generated for the organization. But that's 40 students, and by the within a year from now, they're expecting that will go to 100. And then finally, this work that's in Brazil, that's pretty much targeting survivors of sex trafficking, is about 100 kids, poorest of the poor, and that's costing about $411 per year per person. That does not include a house that they're essentially giving 10 kids to live, because these are sex trafficking survivors, and there's nowhere else for them to go.
Wow.
And so, on page 7, the highest paid individuals, Tommy, and at $60,000. In terms of the functional expenses on page 10, this was interesting, because their management general expenses were 15%, but their total fundraising expense was 2%. So their aggregate total expense was 17%, but both were less than 20%, which was great.
Yeah, it looks like what they did is they took their rent and they split it 50-50
Yeah.
between program services and managerial, which
Yeah,
is probably way higher than it needs to be.
Yeah.
Because I'm assuming that most of the facility is used for the actual nonprofit work, because there's not that many people in there to
Well,
justify that much rent for.
their
managers.
facility is an office, but also a meeting place for the organization and for the community. So the community comes upstairs and they use it as a place for teaching, as a place for coaching, and there's several cubes, and there's also a big conference room. So in the evenings, it's used for giving legal advice for those people who are currently undocumented, and help them get documented. The problem, of course, in neighborhoods like this is that you have a lot of people preying on these people and saying, if you give me $10,000, hey, I'll get you a visa. Of course, you know, it doesn't work that way. There is a process that people need to follow. And so the reason why they split it that way, in my opinion, is they do use that other than for just administrative expenses. There's a lot of other space up there that they utilize for meetings and such. That there is another building that's 3 blocks away that is completely used for after-school mentoring and these types of things. Is there any other questions that I can answer that would be helpful?
Anybody else have questions?
Where do they, do you know anything about where they get their contracts for T-shirts or their ideas? Or are they, doing test runs for people, or?
They're fee for service, so if anybody needs a T-shirt, call them up and tell them what you need.
Yeah, that's cool.
Very nice. All right, let's pick somebody outside of Anaheim. Who else would like to jump in here?
I'll do it.
Go for it.
All right, my organization was called the Chill Foundation Incorporated.
Blaine, that doesn't surprise me.
Wow.
But they provide opportunity for underserved youth through 13 cities across America to build self-esteem and life skills through board sports, whether that be surfing, snowboarding, or skateboarding. I was inspired by this organization because I'm passionate about all 3 of those sports, and I'm very, very passionate about inspiration. I feel that if you can inspire a young kid at a young age through either anything board sport related or art or anything, they can kind of build a different mindset to kind of be successful in life if they're inspired. So most of all of their money comes from contributions and grants of a total of $1,251,957, and then they have no investment income, so everything's coming from grants. So then this was a private foundation, so the 990 was kind of lined up a little bit different on the pages,
Yeah.
scattered throughout of it. And then for their salaries and employee benefits, only one person gets paid in the company. Everyone else is pretty much volunteer. So the leader of the company gets $105,000, and she's literally the only one who gets paid.
So as a private foundation, do you know who the back money's coming from?
Excuse me?
Do you know who the back money's coming from?
Yeah, it's coming from a snowboarding company called Burton Snowboards. This is out of Burlington, Vermont. So it's coming from the owner, Jake Burton.
What exactly does the money go for? I mean, because it says they help kids snowboard and the whole self-esteem, but what exactly does the money go for?
Excuse me?
What is the money used for? What do they do with the money?
So the money is used to purchase gear, meals for the day, lift tickets, just kind of providing a day, as well as like a day of team bonding with special classes on different topics, whether that's like self-esteem or different life skills of like financing and stuff like that.
And who are the kids who are benefiting from this?
These are underserved youth in 13 cities across America.
And does that include here?
Yes, they have a area in Los Angeles.
And do you know how they select the people?
Excuse me?
Do you know how the people are selected?
It's kind of like through the areas they're in, selected through kind of low income areas that are kind of through schooling and through schools and stuff like that.
And is the LA primarily a surfing?
The LA one's actually primarily snowboarding.
Big Bear.
In fact, it's all based on the whole company or the foundation was primarily started with snowboarding since that's what it's funded, but they're starting to branch into skateboarding and surfing as well.
So in a year, do you know how many kids they have outreach to?
Excuse me?
How many kids do they go through the program in a year? Any idea?
No, I'm not sure. Like I said, the 990 was set up a little bit differently, so I wasn't really educated on how to read it, so I was kind of just searching through it to find all my information.
Okay.
Yeah, I won't try to teach the private foundation. Okay. I don't know what the board's going to do with this, honestly.
Okay.
But let me take a look at that, the 990, at some point after class and let you know if there's enough information there that we could do this. So,
Okay, awesome, thank you.
thanks, Blaine. All right, who's next?
I can go next.
All right, go ahead. Who said I can go next?
This is Dave Gray on the phone.
Okay, Dave, you're up.
So the organization I looked at was the Colorado Women's Employment and Education Foundation or something like that. And kind of a spoiler, it turned out to be a no for me, so that was okay for the presentation.
All right, tell me the name of the organization one more time.
Colorado Women's Work and Work Education and Employment.
And how did you pick this particular organization?
I'm not super involved with a bunch of local nonprofits, so I was searching around for various nonprofits, and I happened upon one that they had their 990s on their website, and it's also something that's interesting to me.
Okay.
personally.
And what
So
do
the
they
reason
do?
It's interesting to me is because what they do is they help single parents transition off of welfare by giving them job skills. I mean, that's interesting to me for a couple of reasons. First of all, because having a single parent that is empowered is super inspiring to the child that they're providing care to. Helps them see that if their parent can do it, then they can do it too. And they actually have the 990 on their website. Is that in the comments?
Was it the full 990 or was it an easy? Do you know?
It was a full 990.
All right, maybe I have the wrong one then.
And the first red flag for me was comparing lines 8 and 9. On line 9, they had significantly more program service revenue than contributions and grants. And that turned out to be because they are being paid through federal programs. And then second red flag is investment income. They made about 50 grand on investment income.
Is this the right organization? CWEF.org?
It's actually CWEE.org.
CWEE. All right, let me try to catch up with you here.
I pasted the link to their 990 in the comments. In the chat on the site. There you go.
Because I don't want you to reject out of hand just because they have some investment income. I just want to look at.
Well, it was a combination of the things. It was the dependence on the federal programs plus the investment income.
Okay. Yeah, I mean $50,000. Just generally, $50,000 of investment income out of $2 million total revenue. That's that's a pretty small percentage.
Well, they have 1.8 in stock holdings. 1.8.
Yeah. Okay.
The salaries were reasonable. There were two people that drew a salary. The president was 100,000, and the COO was about 30,000.
So where are they getting their money from? Because it says program
It
service
doesn't say
revenue.
specifically.
Let me see if I can figure that.
It says fees from government agencies. That was the most specific thing I saw. I'm informed about which agency is paying.
It's just strange that they would call this that this particular mission, which says help single parents get off welfare, they're saying they're making $1.5 million from. It just seems unusual to me. Like about a fourth of the time I discover that they don't really know how to fill out the form. And what they're really showing there is money that was brought in that they used for that purpose, but it wasn't from charging for it. So let me just see here. Oh yeah, so fees from government agencies. So they just put it in a weird spot because it's not really program service revenue. It really should go, see where it says 1E government grants? To me, it really should go in there. But
How do you differentiate between fees versus grants?
well, program service revenue, the definition of that from my perspective is being able to charge for the specific thing that they're doing to the people that are like a hospital is charging patients, so that's program service revenue. This to me, they're calling it fees. I don't know. My gut tells me it's more of a grant, but I see where they're coming from. Either way, they're getting the vast majority of what they need from the government agencies. So that's I guess why your primary reason for rejection, I assume.
Yeah, that plus their large amount of assets that they have that are, I guess, their buffer against the organization disappearing.
Yeah.
I did really like their mission, so I was kind of sad to see that they were so dependent on the government and also on their own funds.
Yeah, and it's not, that doesn't make them a bad organization. They may be very effective, they may be a high impact. The question just is, for us, is that a good place for us to put our money? So it's not like we would say, ew, yuck, you're a horrible organization. We would just say, hey, continue what you're doing. If you have found governments to fund this whole thing, then, you know, more power to you. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Good. So, are you planning on going back and looking around some more for another organization that you can vote yes for?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Well, I appreciate you sharing this. Did you already do that, or this is where you're at this moment?
I have one that I haven't looked at enough.
Okay. No, that's all right. We can wait. We can address that in a future week. Thank you, David. Anyone else have questions? All right. Who else? I love
Mr.
it.
Emerson, I can go, or
Okay.
refer to Michael.
Go ahead, Emerson.
Okay, my organization is called Six Stones Mission Network. We live in the DFW area, and this is an organization that works in what we call the Mid-Cities area, which is the area between Dallas on the east and Fort Worth on the west. And part of that area in the Mid-Cities is very, very prosperous, and then this southern part of that area is not prosperous at all. So this organization works to help under what they call underprivileged children, families, and whatever. They have a warehouse and a food store and a food distribution process, and so they do several things. Their first project was a New Hope Center, which they do food and clothing. And
Hang
warehouse and
on, Emerson.
We also have some
I'm having trouble finding the organization.
Six Stones Mission Network.
6 SIX stones.
No, number six. Number six.
Literally the number 6, which yeah, sometimes gives me a different result here. That's just mean. We need a better search engine. All right, sorry to interrupt you like that. I just want to be able to keep up with the doc.
No problem. Is what they do. I started on, they have the New Hope Center where they distribute food and clothing. They have a warehouse and a store there. The store, they give people vouchers and go in and trade vouchers for food and clothing. So they're trying to determine that there is an underprivileged. They also have 2 satellite distribution centers. They have trucks that take to try to help those areas. They serve several cities in that area. It's a pretty good size network they have. They also have the deal they call CPR, where they help people repair their homes, improve their homes, and even in some case renovate homes, again for underprivileged situations. They do a back-to-school program where they provide around 5,000 to 6,000 kids every year with school supplies and resources for school, and they work with the school districts to get the information on the underprivileged kids and who they should help. They do community-wide food drives to raise food. I found out about them. They pick, my wife works at the Starbucks, and they pick up the day-old food from Starbucks. And then I saw a sign at the Kroger store which says that they get their food to 6 Stones, and so I thought I'd check them out and found out they're quite an organization. They also do a Christmas gift and food, and again through the school districts they give food and Christmas gifts to underprivileged families, and they do that to the school districts. And families submit a list of things that they would like to have or need for their children, and then they also give them food to give them through their Christmas holidays, and they do that to the same 5,000 or 6,000 people every year. And they actually have a community garden. They have a 3/4 acre garden where they actually grow some of the fruits and vegetables that they have in their store. Looking at their 990, the revenue is about $1.5 million a year. They make nothing from program service revenues. They have a little bit of government grants, but that comes from working with the local cities and trying to identify indigent people with needs. And so those cities help them out with a little bit of funds, but it's a small percentage of their revenue. So they're virtually supported by contributions. There's only one salary of the key people, and that's about $9,000 for the executive director, and he that salary is actually a pass-through from the local church who gives them the money to pay him. They have 23 people on staff that make about maybe average of $23,000 a year, but with that warehouse and the trucks and the gathering of food that's just done all hours of the day and night, they have to have some staff. So their salaries seem reasonable for what they're doing.
Sure.
To me. And I talked to a lady. I couldn't talk to the director, but I talked to a lady today, and she was so excited that somebody was calling and talking and wanting to know more about it. Listen to it.
That's cool.
So I think they're a good, solid organization. And based on looking at the 990, I think they're pretty solid in what they're doing.
So are they, do you know if they're counting food and donations? The one thing that's interesting that's blank here is this line G, which says non-cash contributions included. So the one question I would have for them is, this $1 million in grants and individual contributions, how much is some of that actually the food, because they should be valuing the food that they're getting, and I'm just not sure if they're not doing that or if it's included in there.
Yeah, and the lady I talked to today couldn't answer that question. So since she doesn't do the 990, she didn't know the answer to that.
Okay.
So anyway, even if it is food or dollars, either way, they're finding this stuff to handle and pass on. And so they're not accumulating. If you look at their balance sheet, they're not accumulating any excess cash. They've got about $600,000 in cash, but they're trying to accumulate a little to buy another warehouse. And if you look at their balance sheet, they do have a warehouse that they own, and then they look down below. They bought that with a Ex-Im bond float. So they're trying to raise enough money to put the down payment on a larger facility and do that again with Ex-Im bonds. So.
Yeah, that all looks great. So I don't know with that. So yeah, if you do end up getting involved, I mean, sometimes we end up being, hey, you might get in trouble with the IRS if you don't, start valuing your food, so that the value of the food would show up both in revenue under non-cash contributions, and would show up on this line too in grants to individuals. So I don't know if this 355, I don't want to jump down into the rest of the document, but that's you might ask to talk to somebody. Can you click back to the on position?
Oh, you're talking about line 2? Yeah, the grants they're doing there are basically to renovate homes.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't realize what you were talking about, but that money is basically money they spent to renovate homes. They go in and find homes where people living there, they're in just dire straits. Generally, they're owned homes, and they try to make them livable. And so that's where that is going. So, and that money I don't think it belongs on that line. It ought to be going to subcontractors or something, but that's money they're putting out to renovate homes.
Okay.
I put it in mind if I were doing that.
That particular number, it doesn't bother me. It's just that if you end up talking to somebody a step above whoever you talk to, then encourage them to put the value of the food both as non-cash revenue and as grants going out. So.
Can you go to page 2?
Excuse me?
Can you go to page 2?
Yeah. Here?
Yeah. It's interesting that 4A, 4B, and 4C has nothing to do with food.
So, renovation of homes. Maybe I misunderstood that. Again, if the food is just bring the food in and pass it out, maybe they don't put any dollars next to it. so it doesn't
Yeah,
show up in the
I'm
top.
assuming that's
I thought
probably
the-
true. Yeah,
I
I'll
thought the
find out.
backpacks were food, but it's with school supplies.
Right.
Yeah, the school supplies have to be purchased, so there's a cost to that.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Christmas gifts as well.
Yeah, if you could see if you can find out, you know, from, you know, whoever's doing the books. There's no paid performer, so it looks like it's self done. That would be useful.
So your question is, what give?
But the question is, what's the value of the food that gets donated, and the value of the food that's going out? How are they handling all that? So,
Okay. All right.
and do they recognize that that needs to be part of their 990? Thanks.
Okay.
Another question, Elizabeth? You just muted yourself.
Okay. Interestingly, my organization also deals in receiving donations of food and processing them out. And they also didn't have, it's one notation that I made as well, that they didn't have any value listed on that food. And I think it is because it's a pass-through, it's donated with a zero value from the restaurant or store, and then there's no monetary value assigned. I'm not positive, but it's interesting to me that it's my only question in my organization too. Why is there no value assigned to this food?
Yeah.
There might be something there.
And again, a lot of nonprofits are run by well-meaning people that don't have, you know, accounting backgrounds and just are naive to it. So you can provide a little bit of education to them. What's the name of your organization?
Mine is Hope City Homes,
And what city is that in?
Kansas City, Missouri.
Got it. All right. Well, since you're up.
Whoops.
Never volunteers.
All right, Hope City is actually an organization that I'm pretty familiar with. I've been involved with them in different ways, and I've actually helped them raise money. I did their year-end campaign last year as a consultant, and they have been part of the ministry that I've been deeply involved in for many years, and 2 years ago came out from under the umbrella to stand alone. So they're in an interesting season. And they are focused on serving the inner city, and they do it primarily 3 ways: through a food pantry and hot meals, through a community center, and through something they call a trade-off program, where they partner actually with the judicial system and take nonviolent offenders who are addicted to substances, and they can actually trade off some of their jail time and come to this program and be rehabilitated. And it centers around, it is very religious, and it centers around having a prayer room. So there's a room in the community center with about 18 hours a day, 7 days a week of worship and prayer going, and it's a main part of how they do the rehabilitation. So they have this incredible success rate, 95%, something insane, for rehabilitation off of drugs and alcohol. And it's a 6-month program, and they serve 300 families a week with groceries, and they get donations from the local big aggregate, like Harvesters aggregates all the food, and then they can buy it by the pound kind of thing. But they can feed a family of 6 for $25 for the month. That's how cheap that they can get food, and then all the other donations. So with grocery bags, et cetera, it's just amazing. So obviously I have a personal investment. We give their, you know, you can help them build a new bed for an addict for $500, and you know, it's just an incredible story to tell anybody that kind of return on investment is kind of mind blowing, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, and going through their 990, it was fun because they are on a shoestring. So some of the highlights, I'll just do the highlights. 100% of their revenues are generated from donations and ministry grants. Zero government, zero. They're not a pass-through organization. The director's salaries are close to non-existent. They're less than 1% of revenue. So the highest director salary was $9,000 a year, and part of that is because many of the staff actually raise support as though they're missionaries, because they are. So part of the way that our family invests is that we actually support some of their staff as missionaries.
So they raise their own support. Is that what?
They raise their own support, and then some of them get a kind of a stipend, you know, to help out with that. And so the highest one was $9,000 a year.
And if they raise their own support, is that off budget for this particular organization, or are they doing it through some other organization?
The support in this was their 2015 990,
Yeah.
which actually is their first year out of the umbrella of the other organization, and so they didn't pass the support through. It doesn't show on this 990, if that makes sense.
Okay, so
but I would assume that in 2016 it would.
Okay, so hidden in this is raising support, people donating to the former parent organization, that parent organization passing on money to those individuals to help them with living expenses.
Right. So let's see. They have also in 2015 zero fundraising costs, which is not a good thing, and so they will have some in 2016, but again they'll be very minimal, you know, because there's just not much. Their total revenues are $290,000, a little over that. Their expenses are coming in at $264, so they meet the public support test. And they serve 200 people daily, and approximately 800 if you ask, you know, like who's rotating in and out. And so that breaks down to an investment of per person about $3,600. And those functional expenses are at less than 1%, 0.06%. So yeah, I chose them because one of my passions, I have a few, but one of them is people living in the margin when they don't have any margin, and all it takes is that one domino, you know, to fall and life falls apart, and realizing how much of our lives, my life, happens because people help me with my margin. My mom watches my kids if I need that, or, you know, just all of us have these small support systems. And so I'm passionate about people who don't have that at all, and they're one car breakdown away from losing the job that pays the light bills, that keeps, you know, that they can look for a job on their computer, you know, all those things. And Hope City bills that. So their expenses, when you see that there's a part that grants people, that's paying light bills for single moms, paying utilities, sometimes a lot of times a first month of rent, you know, because if you're poor, getting that first month of rent and then the first month, you know, double rent is close to impossible. So doing that for people. And so yeah, so I've personally just seen the incredible impact, this testimonies of lives coming out of there. That's just amazing. So
very cool. Thank you, Elizabeth. Anyone have questions? I think she covered it end to end. So, all right. Who else is ready?
I can go next.
You're up.
All right. So the organization I chose was School on Wheels. And the reason I chose that is I just have a passion for working with kids, especially younger ones. Specifically, I deal with kids with disabilities, but just serving like any young child and being able to kind of help mold them in their formative years is something that I feel is super important. So what this organization does is it enhances the educational opportunities for homeless children from kindergarten range up to 12th grade. And their organization's work is done mostly through volunteers who meet and tutor the homeless students at wherever that student is located. And so just to get right into the 990, the
Well,
contribution.
going beyond
Oh, sorry,
going beyond the mission statement, what is it that they're doing?
Sorry, what?
Going beyond the mission statement, what is it in English that they're doing?
That they're doing. So they're pretty much just what they do is they tutor all the students, and they also provide like school supplies and stuff for the students. And depending on the age range, they also they like help with scholarship money and that sort of thing too for the students.
And how did you find this particular organization?
I wanted to volunteer for them a little while ago, but I just couldn't. I couldn't make a commitment to doing. My schedule was changing all the time, and I wasn't able to commit to the 1 hour a week at that certain time. But I found the organization online like a year ago.
Okay,
Yeah. Go on.
go on.
All right. So the contributions and grants, they are at $2 million, a little over $2 million, and their service revenue is about $5,000.
Actually, their service revenue is zero.
Sorry, what?
Their service revenue is actually zero. Do you see line 9 up there? So the service revenue here, which means charging for stuff, that line is blank. The 5,000,
Oh,
the 5,000 is investment income.
never mind then. So their service revenue is zero. I guess I skipped a line.
There you go.
And then down to line 15 with their salaries and employee benefits, it's at $1 million.
Yeah, which we generally don't care.
Although,
We only care about the high salaries. So
okay.
the million itself doesn't, I don't know if that's big or small. So I wouldn't worry about that particular number.
All right. And they have, they don't get any grants from the government. So, but I noticed that they do a lot of fundraising.
Okay.
So I don't know if that's something. And then their total functional expenses is at $1,800,000, a little over like that.
I'm catching up.
And that's all I have.
I'm catching up to you. Yeah, somehow they're able to raise 1.8 million, $2 million on no fundraising. So
No, but I thought I saw that they had a lot of fundraising. Maybe I was looking at something different.
I'm showing out of 2 million that they spent, 1.8 million. So 10% of that's 180,000, and they're at 60,000. So they're at 3.5–4% max in fundraising,
Yeah, well,
which is amazing. I don't know how they must have a great base. Yeah, I did. There was something under here called fundraising events. There's 150,000 hiding up in here. But,
Oh, yeah.
But either way, still the numbers are good for fundraising. All right. Thank you, Audrey. All right, Corona. Who's ready to go there?
All right, I'll get it over with.
Oh, come on. That's
So,
not the enthusiasm I
organization-
need.
The organization that I chose is called Together We Rise, based out of Brea, California. And
Okay.
I found their most current 990 on their website. GuideStar, I set up my own account. I went ahead and did that. I don't know if the Power Plus account has like a better access to information.
Probably not. But the year is not all that important to me.
Right. So, but if you look at the top of that, for the tax year dates,
Yeah.
it goes from August through December, so it's only partial year.
Oh, okay. So they
And I
switched.
believe-
They switched fiscal years.
Right. So if you look in the back, it does give a description for that. Which is on page 20. And I actually pulled 3 of their 990s just because there was some strange things happening between 2012 and 2014.
Is this their website?
Yes, that is it.
And what page will I find their? There it is.
I
Click here to
I
view our
believe right
990.
there, click to view our 990. There you go.
All right, take it away.
Okay, so I chose this organization namely because, in some soul searching, kind of trying to discover what my goal is for the big picture, more on a worldwide level. I think children are kind of the key to making our society better. Across the world, and making people understand everybody has cultural differences and learning to accept those cultural differences. So I think starting with children is the way to make that happen. I also, in kind of thinking about this, is I've had the discussion with my wife on a few occasions about what would happen if if her and I were in some kind of tragic accident and my kids had to be cared for by somebody else. Who would we want to do that? What are their options? So that's something that was kind of factored in as well. So that's kind of where I'm at as far as the passion part of it goes. I've also had a tiny bit of experience with kids in foster situations, both on the foster parent side and the foster child side, and kind of seeing how the system kind of throws them in there. And my experience was kind of disappointing, seeing the interaction between the foster kids and the foster parents. Kind of gave me a bitter taste in my mouth about how can the system be better. Just because it seemed like the kids were neglected in my experience.
And do you know how their revenue all of a
So-
sudden skyrocketed?
I'm sorry?
Do you know how their grants all of a sudden skyrocketed?
Yeah, that was one of my questions. So it looks like they have partnered up with a scholarship firm. And there was I think it's on the 2015 when you look in the, where it talks about the grants, the gifts and grants, it jumped and it tells you that it was a single grant of $3.5 million from somebody, and it doesn't state specifics.
Yeah, they
So
don't
that's
have to-
where
they don't
I
have to
wasn't
reveal
able
that.
to do as much research as I wanted to, as far as actually calling and discussing that with somebody in the organization. But that's what it looks like to me, and there is some information on their website saying they have recently partnered with an organization for that.
Okay. Nice.
So yeah, as you can see on that first page, the prior year it was 292,000, which was only a partial year, but still and it jumped. Their average on the other, I think 2012 was in the $400,000 or $500,000 range.
Yeah.
So it jumped by 10 times, right?
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah, for sure. So, and in the everything that I've looked at, on GuideStar, you can also print out a report. So I kind of looked into that a little bit too. So it gives a little synopsis of everything they do, and GuideStar actually does a little bit of research for you too, which is kind of nice. So it talks about how the organization was actually formed by some college students, and it started with a guy named Danny Mendoza, and he had a nephew, I believe it was, who he found out was living in a car at, I think he was 9 years old or something like that. So he had kind of a passion to start this, but I think it was a college project they started for this nonprofit based on that, and it has grown. The information says it has doubled in size since 2008, it's doubled every year since 2008.
That's great.
And with that $3.5 million grant, I'm sure it's more than that.
Yeah.
So a little bit as far as the looking into it, their salaries are very low. And again, without doing the research as far as calling the organization and figuring out, hey, where does most of your stuff come from? And this was all based on web search and GuideStar. It looks like a lot of their donations you can do on their website, but it sounds like they get their I can't think of the word, the people that receive the money
Recipients?
from working with organizations that deal with foster kids. So they work with the system in order to find out who needs the services they provide.
Social services? Yeah.
Correct, yeah, like social services and local governments that deal with the foster kids. So their main, they have like 3 major aspects that they deal with for foster kids. One of them is that foster kids in the system typically are given a trash bag basically to transport their belongings from one foster facility to the next facility, and from my understanding and what I've seen, they actually do move around quite a bit, which is sad also. It'd be nice if there was a way to prevent that, if they could find a home and be able to stay there. I know some foster situations, the kids go back and forth to their families because their families are in trouble for some reason or another, but it's sad to have that back and forth that they deal with. The second program is the Build a Bike program, which they actually have volunteers that participate with the recipients. That was the word I was looking for earlier. To build a bike, and then they present the bike to the recipients, which I thought was cool. And they could just as a participant, as a volunteer, you can get involved in that and actually work with the kids that you're helping out. So that was one of the things that I thought was really neat. Something in the future, you can both participate financially and as a volunteer. And that's something I thought would be kind of neat to do with my children as well, is bring them in and help do this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then the last key is the after kids are kind of transitioning out of the foster care system, they provide a scholarship fund for, I think it was up to 40 kids for about $90,000 each, and that includes costs for tuition, books, living facilities, stuff like that.
Very cool, Tim. Thank you. Well, I've got Corona on the screen here. Jennifer, are you ready?
Yeah, I can go. So my organization is helping our people of Elsinore. And it is a local food bank in Elsinore that helps the residents living within the Elsinore Unified School District.
And how did you pick that?
I became aware of the program. My church, Cornerstone in Wildomar, this is one of the 3 local organizations that we work with. They've just been vetted by our missions team as a organization that has low admin costs and is making a lot of impact in the community. So this program is 100% volunteer run, so there are no salaries. You can see there's 200 volunteers, and it's about 23,000 volunteer hours that are provided each year to make this program run. They're open 3 days a week, and they have a couple different programs. So they have the monthly pantry program, which distributes food to low-income seniors and families that are either referred by local churches, Department of Public Social Services, or Lake Elsinore Unified School District. At all of the schools in the district, they have liaisons who look for, if there's any students that they see that there's a problem or that could possibly benefit from this program, and they refer them directly to the pantry. They also have a clothing program, which again, the liaisons at the school to help students, have clothing for the school year. When I went through their 990, so line 8, their contributions and grants, a little over $1 million, and it's, I believe their government grants was 182,000, and the rest is just supported by the public, local churches, the community, and then they do value their food. So I believe it's one of the last pages where they have evaluation, that 783,000.
Yeah.
They break it down by what is food, what's clothes, and then what are other items that have and their cash value.
Okay.
And then they last year distributed a little over 875,000 meals. They can, in a month, they can help up to 1,400 families, which is about 5,000 individuals, but it just depends on the month. The eligibility process, I have that somewhere. They must, so the applicants must pre-register and they go through income verification. A lot of times it's a bridge to people who are seeking out social services. So you can bring a written referral saying that food stamps are pending, and then this is a way to kind of bridge that gap until they receive those services. And let's see, their hierarchy of who gets the resources of the organization. They try not to turn anyone away, but of course, resources are limited. So mostly it goes to the elderly, and then grandparents that are caring for grandchildren, and then single family homes. So that's how they kind of organize their resources of who gets who is reviewed first. What else? Their fundraising expenses was 1.5%. So you can see it's at $15,681. So low cost there. And
Yeah, it's pretty incredible to find it's pretty incredible to find an organization that's got no salaries whatsoever. That they're able to run an organization of this size, and the logistics of food distribution to that many people without some full-time people to do it. So this is pretty incredible to see that.
Yeah, so I know it's really supported by the local community. A lot of people like Elsinore volunteer here, but also just the local churches and doing food drives. And I know we have a missions team that goes out to, like I said, this is one of 3 in the community nonprofits that we go out to and we commit to every month. So I think really working with, it's a Bible-based organization, which was important to me, but so really using that network of churches and religious, organizations in the community to get volunteers.
Very good. All right, Linda, you've got a lot to live up to here.
Yeah, I'm gonna pass. I'm passing.
All right, I'll take volunteers at this
I
point.
need a little bit of help with mine.
Okay, which organization is that?
So I picked safe alternative for everyone, and they're out of Temecula. They're known as SAFE, and they help children, youth, and families who experience or are at risk for abuse and violence. And when I did my research, this was really hard for me. But a story popped up that really tugged at my heart, and I think that's why I kept going back to this one. There was a young mother who was murdered by her boyfriend in 1993 on Mother's Day. She has a 6-year-old daughter. Also, the officer that was called out to this call was also murdered by her boyfriend in a parking lot in the apartment complex. So this, I don't know, I kept going back to this one, but I'm looking at their 990 and I need some help with it.
Okay. When you said it was hard finding an organization, it was hard to find your passion, and what was the difficulty?
Exactly, and my passion, and just, I mean, this is new for me, so I'm listening, I'm observing, and trying to take everything in. So, yeah, I'm not experienced like everybody else here.
Well, a lot of us are just faking it really well. Okay, so let's just go through the 4 or 5 key things that we want everyone to go through. So on this first page, we just want to look at line 8 versus line 9. Make sure that it's not an organization that's got a huge line 9, which means they're just charging for stuff and they're sort of a for-profit organization. This line 9 is 0, so they don't charge for things. So that's test 1. Test 2 is just to look on page 2 and get a sense of what it is that they do. So they're providing support programs and therapy sessions for at-risk families. You know, we as the board have this mantra of people in need. So is it people in need, and are their needs being addressed? And so that seems like passes that particular test there. We skip all the yes nos. We go to the salaries page. Look to see if there's any atrocious looking salaries.
It wasn't too bad. I wasn't able to speak with anyone, which is why I feel so unprepared today.
No, it's fine. I mean, if anyone made more than 100,000, it would have to show up on this form. And calling them and saying, do you, they're not going to give you any different information that's in here. I look at this. Okay. I look at this total line on the second page just to make sure that there isn't information that's hiding in the background in some Schedule O, such Schedule Q, Schedule Z. And so that 89,000 appears there and on the one salary. So that's the one person. There's nobody that's making more than 100, and this is the highest salary that's there. So that page is good. I look at this revenue page. It's not necessary that you do, just to see where their revenue's coming from, and it looks like it's just coming from individual contributions, which I like.
Well, they also have, so the woman who's murdered, her name's Allison, so they have Allie's resale shop. And again, couldn't speak to anybody. I had set up an appointment on Friday and waited there for 2 hours to be told she was unavailable to speak with the executive director. And then I thought, oh, well, what are they hiding? What am I missing in this 990? I started getting suspicious.
Yeah, I mean, you would think if they had a thrift store that is part of this organization that I would be able to see that information. In some cases, they may be running the thrift store as a separate organization or as a for-profit C corporation where profits are being funneled into here. But
Would it have its own 990 then, or?
Depends on whether it's nonprofit or for-profit. Yeah, I would ask him that. I would expect him, if the thrift store was part of this, then I would see program service revenue. I would see, sale of inventory here, on line 10, and that's all showing up as 0. So somehow it's off budget. And I'm not saying that I'm critical of that. I'm just saying it's not part of what they're reporting as this organization.
Mhm.
But it's worth asking. I wouldn't stand in line. I would just do a phone call.
Yeah, let me ask, if that phone call had never been made or personal contact, you would have no idea that there was a thrift store, would you? Or would you not?
She said from personal experience she knew there was a
Yeah,
thrift
but I
store,
mean,
I would
just
not
by
know.
looking, okay.
Yeah, that's correct.
I think I was kind of browsing their website, Steve, and it looked like that Alley's thrift shop is actually mentioned on their website.
Yeah, it is. That's where I got it.
Mhm.
Is it ALI?
Yeah,
LLA.
I think, yeah.
Say it again.
I think it's-
LLI. 2 L's.
Let me just do a separate search for that.
Resale shop. Yeah, it'll be Allie's Resale Shop.
Yeah, if you go on their regular website homepage, which is safefamiliesca.org, and you scroll to the bottom, Allie's Resale Shop is actually listed
Do you know how long that's been
at the bottom.
in place? How long they've had the thrift shop? This is
I don't.
This
know.
is a 2014 990, so if it's new, that's possible. Maybe it's in there 15, 16, 17, or 15 or 16. Interesting, though. I would ask him.
Okay.
All right, thank you. All right, I guess we'll do one
Thank you.
more. Anyone dying to get it over with?
I can go.
All right, Mark, you're up.
Okay, the name of the organization is called Free the Captives. It's a faith-based anti-human trafficking nonprofit
Spring.
in Houston.
Spring, Texas.
Yes, sir. I didn't know until about a month ago, I learned this in our church, which is pretty active in the community, that Houston's one of the largest hubs in the nation for human trafficking. I think it's because we have all the ports, international airports, and a couple major interstates that cross through Houston. So, so I went through a bunch of, I wanted to do something Houston-based and anti-human trafficking, and I went through a bunch of organizations. This is the one that really stood out. It's founded by an attorney, which is a bad thing, but she's also a graduate.
Wow! Nice!
So she just got her master's in theology in 2013 as she was founding this organization, which I thought was pretty cool. What I liked about it was that it seemed to be a pretty good mix of, kind of hands-on, doing things for victims, connecting victims with other organizations, extremely integrated with law enforcement, but they're doing also a lot of stuff with advocacy. They host golf tournaments, they 5K runs, billboards, TV and radio spots. Because on the trafficking thing, information is really a key piece of it. So it's pretty, I thought it was a pretty solid organization. I have some questions that I have sent them, which I'm waiting to get some responses back to give me kind of actual numbers of how many people help, things like that. So I'm lacking that fidelity from them. So it's not, I wouldn't put this in front of the board yet. I probably need another week to get that info from them. The founder's on a trip, so I can't get to her right now. Anyway, so So going to the 990, they only have one paid staff, which is the founder, and that's about 40,000, and most of that looks like it's going to cover her travel expenses, things like that. Then,
One other question I would have,
volunteer.
hey Mark,
Sure.
one other question I would have for them, on page 2 here where they're listing their main deals here, they're showing revenue next to each one of these things, but these don't seem to be revenue generating things like direct services to traffic teenage victims. I don't think they're charging them $33,000 for that service. So you might just ask them what they mean by, the revenue in each one of these sections over here.
Yeah, I don't think it's filled out correctly because they only have about 60,000 in revenue total, and they explain that elsewhere on the form. But yeah, that doesn't make sense. I think they made another mistake a little bit later as well.
Yeah, that's a bit weird. That
So
might
they
be
separate revenue by taking some of the people that they rescue and they put them to work, mostly making decorative candles, things like that. I guess they make some money off of that. And then when they host events, renting booth space, that kind of stuff, they generate a little bit of revenue from that.
Yeah, that would be the true program service revenue. In their little redacted page 9 here, they're not showing. Yeah, so their new sales here is 49,000.
Who does that redaction?
It's just some of the forms are done that way. It's not really redacted. It's just saying
Okay.
they don't want any.
You have to put empty blocks because everything adds up.
Yeah.
Okay.
When it gets scanned in and stuff like that. I
Got it.
was being facetious there.
Yeah, so they're CIA fat.
There's code words hidden in this page.
Well, human trafficking isn't just sexual human trafficking. Maybe they got all these folks working this, making sandals.
Former ties in the military,
Yeah.
If you go to part 9, the thing I think they made a mistake on, if you look at line 5, I've looked at other part 9s from different organizations. That 41,000 is what they list as her compensation.
Yeah, and that's okay. So if she says to me, well, I spend 5/8 of my time doing our nonprofit work, and I spend 25% of my time doing general management, and I spend 10% of my time doing fundraising, then she's welcome to split her salary that way.
Okay, all right, then that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if you go to the bottom, line 25, the only area that was quote unquote out of bounds over 10% was that management and general expenses.
Yeah.
She's the only person working.
And
half of that.
Yeah, the law of small numbers, it's really hard to, you're only spending 150. We grant some grace there because, it's hard to manage an organization for less than $20,000. So
Yeah.
I don't have a problem there.
So that's it. Right back there.
Yeah, so if you can get answers to your own personal questions, and then just ask them about that revenue line, those revenue lines on page 2, when you submit the final form.
Okay, we'll do.
All right, team. So in the coming weeks, what we'll do is either at the beginning, middle, or end of class, in conjunction with the regular instruction, I'll ask if somebody wants to throw in, their review, just so there's not. I can rest my voice. We can hear your voices, and you're not listening to my monotone for 2 hours. So I hope that was beneficial for you guys to hear from other people and hear about their passions. And those of you that have been afraid of what we might do to you when you present, you can see that We are a kinder, gentler organization, and you don't have to fear when it's your turn. So, thank you all. We will see you next week.